Whether you're leading for the first time, leading through change, or learning to lead all over again, this space is for you. No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk from those who've led through challenges, adapted under pressure, and thrived in the face of change. Welcome to Command to Corporate, where leadership isn't just taught, it's lived. Let's get to work. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Appreciate everyone for tuning back in to Command to Corporate, or for short, C2. We're trying to float that a little bit and see how it is. You might see
Right.
some branding or something later on. So we'll see how it works out. I'm your host, LP. He is T, and we are back at it. So the last time we caught up, we were talking about our first duty station,
Mhm.
that transition. So, with that first exposure or early exposure in the Army, um, if you can recall, your first NCOs or officers, what leadership lessons did you learn from them? Like what stood out, and maybe how that kind of started to shape your vision or your path to leadership.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Larry. Um, so at my first duty station, I had a squad leader that really taught me what servant leadership is and mentorship. And maybe that's everybody goes through that maybe for the first time when they see a good NCO or a good leader.
Mm.
But I truly am grateful to this day that I had the squad leader. So for a couple of reasons. One, he he always looked out for my well-being, and not just for the military technical aspect, but like on the personal side. And so the
Mm.
perfect example of that was, he was teaching me a little bit about personal finance and saving. And
Oh,
I was
that's very
18
good.
years old. Exactly. No idea about personal finance. Savings was the furthest thing in my mind. But he actually taught me. He's like, hey, you should start saving for retirement. Like 18-year-old me now.
Man, that is freaking. You lucked out, man. You lucked out. That was a golden one right there.
Yes. And so, and let me tell you how good this guy is. He put me in his car, drove me to, at that time was Smith Barney. So that's kind of like the equivalent of like, whatever bank now these days, Charles Schwab.
Yeah, yeah.
And he sat me down, and he taught me, hey, listen to what this person has to say, and this guy gave me a lesson about mutual funds. That was a big thing back then, mutual funds. And started that day. I started an allotment and started saving. So I've been saving for retirement since I was 18 years old. And so like that was the first lesson. The second lesson was he always encouraged me um, to develop myself. And so he's like, what are you doing? Are you going to college? What are you doing for college? And so that was like a nonstop, reminder. Once
Mm.
again, private gazelle. I did not care so much for that.
Yeah.
But luckily I had him, and he encouraged me to go to night school. And so
Wow.
I
Yeah.
was, PT during the day, put in a full day's work, and then go to night school for like 3 hours. And as a result, I actually got sick and tired of school. I was just always tired. You know how it goes. If you took
Yeah.
the classes in the army, you're exhausted all the time.
Yes.
And
I've
so
been
that
there. Yeah.
actually encouraged me to look into getting my degree faster. And
Mm.
that's how I actually got into West Point. I got interested into West Point. It was a soldier magazine back then, and there was like a small
Wow.
advertisement about West Point.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I read up a little about it, and I was like, I can get my degree there. I wasn't even thinking about continuing service and being an officer. Honestly, my number one priority, I was like, okay, I really do not like going to night school. Let me see how can I get this out of the way.
Yeah.
And so I applied at West Point, and that changed the rest of my life. So two biggest things in my life. Well, one, going to West Point and becoming an officer and continuing service, which really set me up, for the future. and
Mm.
two, started my retirement savings back, when I was a private 18, 19-year-old kid. And this was all due to this NCO that, really changed my life forever. But looking at him, it's, I picked up those lessons of just mentorship and caring, and not just drilling people on like your job necessarily,
Yeah.
and that's one way you show how you care, like encourage people to be technically proficient, to be physically fit, but
Hmm.
also to care about others on a more personal level.
Yeah.
I mean, who I can't think of anybody that is going to put me in their car and take me to a bank, an
No.
investment firm to start saving, and that's a quality NCO, and that's one lesson I've definitely learned.
So, first of all, let's give that person a shout out. Was it Sergeant who? What was his name? Or her
Don't
name?
ask.
You know? Oh my gosh.
Don't put me on the spot now. I'm drawing a blank right now,
All
honestly.
right. When it comes to you,
I'll have to figure it out. I'll find out.
but that experience though, first of all, I mean that's amazing. To have someone invest in you, potentially invest in others, and really set them up for their life. If they were to pay attention, you're being taken to Smith Barney
Mhm.
and say, here, listen, follow this, go to school. Like you
Yeah,
need to develop, grow. You want to be set. I mean, just to care about you in that way
yeah,
is amazing. For those that are listening to this, like if you've had a similar experience, definitely drop it in the chat because I don't know. Haven't met anyone that said that that's happened to them. Now
yeah.
that doesn't mean that it wasn't happening, but I didn't hear of anyone saying, "Oh, so and so, went down. You should check it out." I didn't get that at the time. So, yeah, what was the first duty station for you when
It
this was going
was
on?
Fort Bragg.
Fort Bragg. Okay, man, that was awesome.
Well, the unit was awesome. The NCO was awesome. Fort
Yeah.
Bragg.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
still, I still have my reservations about that place, but it was a definitely first, experience for a first duty assignment.
But when you think about like your impressions going there, coming from the Northeast,
Mm.
may have been similar to me coming from the Northeast and going to Fort Hood. It was
Oh
just
yeah,
like,
that's another place.
yeah, it was like and it wasn't so much Fort Hood, it was just the town around it, and I was just like, I don't know about this. Like, and I think I mentioned it to you before. I really felt like I traveled in time. I was like, why are there so many used car lots
Yeah.
and barber shops and
Yes.
pawn shops? I was like, I
Yes.
have never seen this before in my life. I was like, what in the heck is going on? So it
Oh
was a shock. But I would say for me, I had some pretty awesome leaders. Thankfully, I'm still connected to them via Facebook. There's some that stand out in my mind that really help shape the leader I am today.
yeah.
And the same thing, that servant leadership, caring about your well-being, because for those that when you're coming in the military, it applies to everybody, but when you come in as a young soldier and let's say you're sick, well, you got to go on sick call. Sick call is super freaking early in the morning, and you got to get there. Like you got to wake up, and if you're feeling bad, who wants to wake up even earlier to go stand in line to go in a sick call? And those leaders that I had at the time, they would just be like, we'll cover you in formation, just get some rest, or somebody might bring me some medicine, from the store or whatever, until you're able to get up and actually go to sick call.
Mm.
But that's the kind of leaders I had. And then also, you know, again, caring about well-being, challenging me to do better, like thinking for myself. I remember, and to name them, and I'm sure at some point they will see this: Sergeant Gales, Sergeant Caver, Chief Levy,
Man, you're making me feel bad now.
Chief Pretty, and there was others around me, but those definitely stood out as. And I had some very good leaders early on, but that group there really, like, it was like a bond, a family. And I think for those that had the exposure and working with them, and I remember this young soldier that was under me that just retired not too long ago. He named those inspirational leaders that helped shape him. He named the same ones, but then when you have someone name you, I was kind of shocked. I was like, you named me. Like, I was like, wow. But it was those things where, like, I was that soldier that was always asking why this, why that. And they would take the time, instead of saying, because I said so, or just move out, they would explain it and tell me, here's why. And then also challenging me to figure it out on my own. So yeah, I'd say, hey, Sarn, how do you do this? And they say, when in doubt, whip the book out. So I would
I
have
like
to
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would have to go to the manual, look for it. And then as I started to grow and develop as a leader later down the line, and soldiers would come ask me, I would say, when in doubt, whip the book out. You got to go look it up. So that way, and I'm not just, you become resourceful.
Yes.
You start to become resourceful. And
It taught you
I think
ownership.
yeah,
Yeah.
ownership. Yeah, you're right. And I
That's
think
huge.
that really helped me to guide people.
Mm.
Don't just provide it for them, but
Yeah.
because then that instills that, let me go figure it out. And when all else fails and you've made that attempt,
Yeah.
now you can come and say, I'm stuck, or I found it, but I'm still not clear. Can you now help me? But you've
Yes.
made that valiant effort first. And so
Yeah.
that was, I think, a good lesson. And it was those same leaders that uh, put me into my first leadership role, and putting me as like a junior squad leader, and separating out based on our MOSs and giving an opportunity, because I was one of those people that did want to excel as quick as possible in the military. I really said, I loved it. I said, I want to make rank. I want to be that person that is helping to lead this section. And
Yeah.
so looking at people, and I had other leaders in there, and I can remember their names. I won't name anymore, T, I promise. I won't. I
I'm
could, but
gonna
I
have to do
won't.
some research, brother. Yeah.
I could,
Yeah,
but
I
I,
can't
but
wait.
I but I got bits and pieces from them, and some that I thought, I do like this, like we talked about probably earlier on, in a previous episode. But getting those bits and pieces that help shape who who you want to be. And then I wanted to be the best, like crisp uniform, highly shined boots. It's like, I am going to, from
True.
first impression,
Yeah.
you're going to get a first impression from me.
That's a good
you
point.
know
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what's the biggest leadership trait that you took away? Like the top, maybe one or two or whatever.
I think it's that same thing that you said, that servant leadership, that mentorship,
Mm.
because that's what I got. I got that they really invested in me from that standpoint, to go forth and be able to provide, in my mind, outstanding leadership for
Yeah.
the next person. And and it wasn't about yelling, or give push-ups. It was really explaining, and here's how, and you know all of that. So I think it really helped me, just to kind of develop as I went on. And then when I finally, I guess, yeah, like I say, made it to my first leadership role, it was those kind of things. And I remember the first time I had a soldier that, for those that might know the phrase, like a rag bag, and didn't keep his uniform pressed and things like that. Boots weren't really shined. And I remember one time our platoon sergeant coming through, doing inspection through the ranks, and that soldier, pressed uniform, shine boots. And he asked me, "What did you do to him?" I'm like, I didn't do anything. He did it. not me. He did it.
Really?
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that?
You
Like,
know, I mean, I'm instilling something and setting an expectation,
yeah.
but I'm letting him make the change. You know,
Ah,
I'm not like, I want to see you with a press uniform and everything. It's leading by example. The other soldiers leading by example to the point where he's like, you know what? I'm not going to be left behind. I'm
gotcha.
going to step up.
Yeah.
And now you might get dinged for it, but it's still on you to step up. And he eventually did, and it wasn't long. And then it's like
Okay.
he wasn't that type of person, and I think I may have inherited him, you know, as coming into the duty station, coming to the unit, and yeah, but he stepped it up.
So that's an interesting leadership style I've never really thought about. It's kind of leading by example. Yeah, we've all heard about that, but like it's a silent leadership in a way because you kind of you're showing them what right looks like, and you're presenting that, and you present that by your troops. What right looks like, and so if you have like a pretty tightly run ship, I think you could probably bring anybody on board, and they'll like quickly adapt to how your team operates and what they look like, and the standards that they have. I've
Yeah,
never really thought about that, and I guess that is a pretty. I've been in army for 20 plus years, and I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. It's the benefit of like really, having a good operations, a good team, a good run team. I guess it just eventually is self-sustaining in a way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
when you talk about self-sustaining, and I'll get back to another question for you, but it reminds me of when I finally became a section sergeant
Mm.
over my, so it's just me, and then we have a warrant officer in the
Mhm.
section. So I was, at the time, I think I might have been the highest ranking in that section.
Mm.
And I remember one practice I would take is, if we had the flexibility and some orders came down from my platoon leader or whatever, and it says, hey, this is what we got to execute, and I would pull my squad up, we'd meet in our shop, and I'd say, hey, here's the task that we have at hand. Let me hear your thoughts on the best way to approach this. And it went from lowest to highest below me. I'd say, what do y'all think? Go around the room. And everyone would say what they thought. Maybe they agreed with someone else. Everyone would give a unique perspective. And if we had an opportunity to do it, I remember picking the lowest private's idea and saying, you know what? I like that. We're going to go with that one. And
That
I tell
project
that,
must have been feeling amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and I tell that story all the time because I'm like, what do you think happened? How do you think that private felt? And then what is the impression on the rest of the squad? Because the private's like, wow, I'm fairly new and you just took my idea. This is great. Like, I can speak up.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the team, they're just like, well, everyone's voice is valuable.
Yeah.
It's not like it's always has to be me. I'm
Yeah.
receptive to feedback. I'm
Yeah.
receptive to ways, because maybe I think I know the right way, but maybe there is a better way. Maybe you have a
Mm.
different perspective.
True.
Share it.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. That's pretty cool. That
Yeah.
private must been like excited, first of all. And he's
Yeah.
like, or she, I guess,
Yeah.
probably most invested in making sure this is a good idea and executed
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Because like you know, if it fell through, it's like, hey, it's a lessons learned.
Yeah.
You know, we always had those after action reviews that we're always going to go through, but
Mhm.
you know, at least you have that. So when did you take on your first leadership role in the army
Um,
that you can recall?
I guess ooh, that's interesting. Um, because my first role was really kind of, we're backtracking now a little bit, was basic training.
Really?
Yeah. And
Hmm.
we were all standing in the bay. This was like day one of basic training. We're in the bay, everybody's sweating, Like I said last time, people drinking their toilet water out of their canteen. And drill sergeants were yelling. And I think I looked I was looking somewhere else, while I was at position of attention, and this drill sergeant just, boom, just came straight in my face and started yelling at me. I don't remember what he was yelling at, but like I probably was so nervous that I just looked straight through him, you
Mm.
know? And as a result, like I think he was impressed by that, because I wasn't showing any fear, I wasn't showing whatever. But in reality, my insides were probably like exploding, And out of fear, I just kind of like was staring right through him. And the next thing I know, I'm a squad leader,
Wow.
So yeah, so that was basic training, and I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, just a high school kid, not
Yeah.
knowing anything, and just my background was just probably selfish, not knowing. I was on sports teams, but like it was always trying to be the highlight of the team. It's kind of I don't know. As a kid, it was like a lot of individual focus and selfishness as opposed to like
Yeah.
really truly being working on a team and caring about others.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an experience, but it taught me a lot,
Mm.
and I learned a lot by looking at others and the drill sergeants really. They taught me how to be a squad leader in the sense that um, when they said, hey, formation in 2 minutes or whatever. So people are still putting on their shoes or their uniform or whatever. And, Private Gazal, where's your team? I'm out there already,
Oh.
squad leader,
Oh man.
standing, at attention, and like the squad is nowhere to be found.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, like I told you, purely selfish at that time. And so yeah, he's like, "Where's your squad? What are you doing? Help them out." And so like that was like one of the first things like I drilled in my head. I was like, "Oh, So the more I talk to you, and then the more I reflect back, I'm
Yeah.
not a natural born leader, clearly, because it definitely they had to teach me how to be a leader. But yeah, that was like lesson number one probably of leadership.
Mm.
Look out for your team, help your
Yeah.
team, bring them on board.
Yeah.
You're a leader, you're responsible for them, and that was probably the first leadership lesson I probably learned. And it was such a not a good place to learn that.
I experienced something with when it comes to the formation part. I remember when I went through PLDC, so there's primary leadership development
Mhm.
course in the Army. So that's that transition from E4 specialist to sergeant. So some people have the opportunity to go before they get promoted, and some people happen to get promoted and then have to go.
Mhm.
And for those that get promoted and go, you want to make sure you pass or you will be getting demoted. So that
Yeah.
is the risk of that. But I remember, we rotate around and take those leadership roles and be squad leader and be
Yeah.
platoon sergeant, and you go through that. And I remember when it came for me to be, well, for one, is squad leader. So from those early leaders, learning how to inspect in the squad. So what I learned is you're going to do these little half steps. So you're going to stand in front of them, look up, down. Then you're going to do a little half step to the left, up, down, half
Mhm.
step back to the center, half step again, up, down, step, crossover, turn to the, it's very rigid.
Yeah.
And that is how you would properly inspect. And
Mhm.
I remember going through PLDC and watching other soldiers learning and seeing them just move side to side. And I would say, I
Yeah.
would leave formation, I would go up and I'd say, no, that's not how you do this. Let me show you how to do this. This is what you
Mhm.
do it this. And I would always do those type of things to make sure that everyone was successful and say, so they also learn, because if no one's telling you,
Yeah.
how would you know? So I would share those kind of things. And I remember when we were late for a formation, the whole platoon. And so I think we had to be there before Reveille or something went off. And we are like in the middle of crossing and it goes off. We're not even there. And cadre were like, "We got something for you." When this is all over, and I'm like, freaking words you do not want to hear. It's like, oh my God. But learning how to, I was, because of that servant leadership, going through PLDC, when we were tasked with, whatever extra duties we had. We got to go clean here. We go to, I would
So
also go ahead.
I think it might be worthwhile just maybe to explain what PLDC is, especially because I don't think it's called PLDC anymore. Now you're showing
No,
your age.
no, yeah, for sure.
So
It might,
PLDC,
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, so primary leadership development course,
Yes.
and they take you through basically the learning how to be a leader.
Yeah.
So
So you're going from an E4, which is like,
yes,
just enlisted,
yeah,
all
specialist or
over.
a corporal, either
Exactly.
one. And I happen to be a corporal at the time, one of the very few.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Nice. So a corporal is now an NCO, and as an NCO, now you're officially a leader.
yes,
And so the Army basically saying, okay, we think you have potential to be a leader. You've demonstrated leadership skills and traits. And so now they're going to give you the formal training.
training.
Right.
Yes,
So that's what
and
PLDC.
yeah, and at each stage, following from PLDC, and then at each rank as you go up, there is a course to support that next level. Because
Yes.
what the military is saying is your responsibilities are changing.
Hmm.
You need to now learn how to operate at a different level, different
Yes.
responsibilities. Now you have junior people over you. How do you do that? It also
Yes.
focuses, depending on the school, on a different level of proficiency, technical proficiency,
Mhm.
because now instead of you being over your one MOS, you are
Mhm.
now promoted into a different MOS, which means you have a broader umbrella type responsibility over multiple MOSs that fall within that rank. So you have to actually learn bits and pieces of everyone's job. So that way, as a leader, you can also provide that coaching, understand what's going on, and all that good stuff.
Right.
So,
And so
yeah, it's
now you're a PLDC, and pretty much everybody's the same boat as you. I
yes,
mean, exactly. So there's different types of leadership development, or different type levels of leadership skills, and it's basically you all have to work together, and that's part of the thing.
yes, yeah.
School. Yeah,
Yep, everyone's working together. That's when they still had land navigation, which I'm not sure if they still have it.
they better have
Yes,
it.
I that's what I say. They better have it. And if anyone knows that they got rid of it, first of all, it's crazy,
That is
but
crazy.
definitely drop it in the comments. But yeah, everyone is getting a chance to
Mhm.
learn and be put in a position and get feed, and you're being evaluated the whole time. So
Yeah.
as you're getting put in these different squad leader role, platoon sergeant role, whatever
Mhm.
it is, and everyone has, I believe, has to have a chance to rotate
Yeah.
through to
Yeah.
get some sort of evaluation on
Exactly.
how you did. So the feedback and all that good stuff. And so I think it's helpful to grow you, and people may be on the base, people may be flying in depending on the
Yeah.
schooling and where it's available, all for the sake of being able to get promoted and take
Yeah.
on those
Absolutely.
new responsibilities. So yeah, I definitely felt where you're not showing up on time, but it really helped where you're, and one thing I was saying before is I would also actually help do some of the work. And in their minds, of the cadre is like, you are in a position where you are to delegate tasks,
Ah, it's
not
interesting. Okay.
not help. That is what your role
Ah,
is, and they would focus on what are you doing all. And I could have picked up a mop for 5 minutes. They would say, why are you doing all the work?
that's
Put it
interesting.
down
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
focus on delegating.
Yeah.
So I think that is valuable
Mm.
because there's going to be times where yes you can help and participate,
Yeah.
and also times where it's like you just need to delegate,
Yeah.
and to
Absolutely.
get someone to help you refocus on that, not that you always will delegate, but to
Mhm.
say there is a time and place for everything,
Yeah.
and you need to know when to step in and maybe lend
True.
a helping hand, and then I need y'all to go forth and do this because I got to go do something else.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's that makes sense. You know, leadership school, and a lot of people are just individual contributors for the most part coming in, and now delegating is something you really have to learn. It's not automatic, you know, and I totally agree. And there's still some people now, you know, I mean, there's
Oh,
some people VP, SVP positions that are not delegating properly, and
no.
it's really kind of crazy. I mean, but I can't really blame them too much because you know we're lucky, we were fortunate, we had that training, and
Yes.
it does take somebody telling you it's okay to delegate, and this is how you should delegate. Um, but if you don't have that, you're just gonna rely on what you know. You know, hey, I've always done it on my own, so I'm gonna do it on my own.
Yeah. And that's, going from that individual contributor
Hmm.
to being that leader. So
Yep.
I'm no longer solely responsible for these tasks. I have to let it go.
Yep.
And when you mention SVPs, VPs, and you fast forward, I think that's the fortunate thing about the military. And especially if you've had a chance to go through a couple of the schools in the military,
Yeah.
leadership development courses, schools, it really does help because one thing we've talked about offline T is where some people, the military has a structure to its promotion.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about someone taking my job.
Yes.
We're all, it's a point system, or you got to go to review board. You want to make sure you are set up. You have the points, you have, the courses, the PT, you've taken on the leadership roles so that an external group will look at you, forget about everyone else, and say, okay, they've met the bill, they've ticked all these boxes, you are now promoted, you're selected, whatever the case may be, and
Uh-huh.
now you're off to take over somewhere else. Whereas in the civilian world, some people think, oh, you're trying to take my job.
Yes.
And they want to hold on to all of those tasks themselves because
Yeah.
as soon as I let it go, you might outshine me, and my higher ups might say, well, why don't we just pick that person instead of you? And it's that fear
Yeah.
of letting go, thinking someone's going to take your job. And it's like, I'm just trying to help you out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to be a resource. And that's why some people say, sometimes you want to hire people better than you, or at least bring it in a different perspective where it's like, hey, they're meant to help you shine. But at
Mm.
the same time, I'm not going to hold you up.
No.
So if
Yeah.
your goal is to be in my role, well, let's prepare you for that. That's what the military does. Let's prepare you for that. It may not be here,
Yeah.
but at least if you feel like, hey, this is a next logical move and you're not leaving, I'm sorry, but I got to leave, or I got to go to a different department. Fine. That's what we've been working for. You have an opportunity. I'm glad for you. Let's go ahead and get you out the door. Let's get someone else trained up and get in here.
100%. I think I was actually having that conversation yesterday with somebody. Same exact conversation. You know, I think same thing. I think some people might have fear that you know they might be outshone by their subordinate. Um, you know, fear of losing their jobs to this other person. But yeah, I mean, it's we were raised that like, hey, these soldiers will eventually need to take over your type position,
Yeah,
so you need to prepare them now. And
exactly.
that is my number one job as a leader. I mean, I need to make sure that they are prepared to take on the next role. But yeah, I don't see that happening really on the civilian side. Maybe
No.
there are exceptions, obviously, but it's not. They don't spell it out as explicitly, you know.
Yeah. And when you think about the ranking system in the military in all branches,
Mm.
you have that lower level rank that's higher than the next one below, that's higher than the next one
Mhm.
below, and then you might have a group that's all the same that are lower enlisted
Sure.
or junior officers, but there's always somewhere above. And it's by design that people are put in a position to be able to take charge in the
Yeah,
event that you get hurt, you
exactly.
get sick, you're not deployable, whatever the case may be. Well, it's always the next man, next person up that
Yep.
takes over and can go forth and do it. But if you hold everything to yourself, who's prepared? So in the civilian sector, if that SVP, VP, director, whatever, president, vice, whatever you want to call them, are out, it's like, well, who is prepared to take over? And it's going to be like, I'm clueless. I have no idea what they did, no idea what's going on. Then guess what they do? They usually bring in someone else that may have been in a similar role outside,
Mm.
not given opportunity inside. Well, they hogged all the stuff. Like they didn't want to delegate.
We don't even have to take it that extreme. I mean, I've seen it where SVP goes on PTO, all work stops. Like there
Oh,
are initiatives, there are big projects that
don't
are
even get me
supposed to be
started on that.
going, but SVP is took a week and a half off, and there's no work getting done now because the project manager is just like, well, I don't know what the SVP wants. I have to ask for permission. So I don't know where this at, and I don't know. It's a lot of I don't knows. It's funny in the army that won't fly at all, but
No.
here it's like it seems like, oh, it's okay, but it's not, and so just I think people just should delegate and know how to delegate and communicate and share information just so you could go on PTO without having to worry about anything, like
And work stopping, like you
yes,
said.
exactly.
And I remember when I was a staff sergeant at a unit and I was away from my section.
Mm.
I think the platoon sergeant or maybe the shop officer, someone went down to our section and called me up and said, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm over at some other unit." He said, "Well, I need some information. Who can I talk to?" And I said, "Ask someone." He said, "Well, who's next in charge?" I said, "It doesn't matter. Ask someone." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "The next person that walks in front of you, ask that person." He said, "Will they know?" I said, "Everyone knows. I
Yeah.
train my section so everyone knows everything. Everyone knows the same thing." I said, "Just ask person. Lowest, highest, it doesn't matter. Just ask the next person that passes in front of you. They will know the answer." Because I wanted everyone to be prepared in the event that anyone shows up, the answer. So everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, and so the machine continues to operate
Yeah.
without you ever being around. They know your intent, they know your guidance, and so things will continue moving forward. Not to say that you're not valuable, but like you've done a great job training your subordinates. That's like, they feel empowered too, and that's the cool thing about it. Because I'm talking to a project manager right now, and they're frustrated because I'm asking them, and they're being pressured by ELT members to push this project forward, but they can't because they're like, well, the SVP's out. I don't know what to do, Yeah.
And that's crazy. And I think what led me to that is all of my experience as a young soldier going up to division, going to S1, asking a question, and they say, "Well, so and so's not here," and I go, "Well, what does that matter? Like, I need this information," and they'll be like, "Well, they're not here. No one can help you." I'm like, "All these people in here, and no one can help me. What are y'all doing?" I'm like, it should be like, this is crazy. So that one person, there's no backup. Like, are you that? And they
Yeah.
would be like, "Well, you got to come back tomorrow." And I'm like, walked all the way over here, and it's heat. I'm in Texas, and you telling me to walk back over here tomorrow? I'm like, y'all got to be kidding me. And I'm like, it's just blew my mind that that's the way they were operating. It would piss me off every time.
All right. Let's change the subject before I get fired.
All right, okay, let's jump on it then. So, can you recall a time when you failed as a leader early on,
Oh,
or maybe
yeah.
there was a significant opportunity for improvement? Maybe you got chewed out as a result. You said, "Oh,
Maybe we're
something."
better off staying at the other topic.
All right, let me go. Let me take a stab at
Yeah.
um, where I may have. I remember one instance clearly. I was stationed in Korea, and I um, I don't remember the details, but I had my warrant officer,
Mm.
and a warrant officer is the technical officer providing expertise within the section. So even though I may be, and I was a sergeant at the time, so I had a staff, I think two staff sergeants in the section, and then the warrant officer. So they're providing that technical expertise above everyone else. He probably made it the ranks of staff sergeant or sergeant for class, and then switched to a warrant officer. And now they're this technical officer to provide expertise within any of our jobs in the section. Then I had the shop officer, and they're over all of the logistics, I guess you could say, if correct me if I'm wrong, T, over everything, parts and all of that stuff moving in and out of the unit.
Yeah.
So everyone was gone. I'm walking through the hall. My warrant officer says, "Hey, I need you to go do this." I'm like, "Roger, got it." And I'm leaving. And then the shop officer saw me and said, "Hey, I need you to do this." They conflicted. And so I'm
Ah,
like,
okay.
okay, well, what do I do? And I'm thinking, well, the shop officer is higher. I'm
Oh,
going to go ahead and go with what the shop officer said. And I'm like,
sure.
okay, sir. And the warrant officer's not around, so I can't
Yeah.
call him up, whatever. So I just did that. So
Yeah.
then everyone comes back. That my warrant officer calls me in the office. Is like, hey, why did you do that? And I said, hey, you weren't here. I made a command decision and went with what he. I wanted to turn around, make a call. Man, it had turned into a heated argument, yelling, all of this stuff. My section sergeant was there. I mean, the next thing you know, good thing I didn't get in trouble. Next thing you know, I'm in his face, he's in my face. Then he
With
tells
the
me
warrant
something.
officers.
Yes, yes. And Chief Singh, but Chief Singh was cool as I all could be. I
Not
mean,
that day, I
after
guess.
not that day, but I later on met him in Aberdeen, and I mean he was so cool. But at the time, it was just heated. And then he told me something like, at ease or come to something, and that really and I just stormed out the office, slammed the door, walked out.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
my soldiers had never seen me like that. And I would say, as an impression on my soldiers as well, and me, it was probably
Mm.
definitely should have handled it differently.
Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't get hemmed up for it.
Yeah.
And we came back and talked and like, hey, we worked it out. But I would definitely say that was definitely an opportunity that I should have like dialed it back, not flipped off. Back in the day, you would never imagine it now, but I had such a short temper when I first came in the
Really?
military. Basic training, AIT, early on, like it would just set me off. And I'm a pretty mellow guy now, pretty calm. I stay
Yeah.
like that all the time. People probably would never imagine it, but I
No.
mean, if I, I mean, I would just if certain things just pissed me off, that was it. I was just upset,
That's interesting.
Let me tell
I
you,
can see that.
let me even tell you when I was in still in Korea, I had a master sergeant. I was at the time I was an S3 training in schools NCO.
Mm.
So my sergeant major called me up. The person had vacated. I'm in the role. We're getting ready to go on a field exercise. So I'm running up and down the hill in Korea, trying to get things ready, getting people organized. I'm a staff sergeant at this point. And finally, he says, "Come on, Sergeant, let's go to the motor pool and show me what you've gotten done." So I go down and I think I've done an amazing job. That's in my mind. I got all this stuff squared away, everything. And I'm there standing with another staff sergeant. And looks around and he says, "Sergeant, you didn't earn your he just goes in on
So say that again. You got
stuff that
you.
he finds. He said, I didn't earn my pay today. I
You
didn't
did
earn
not
my
earn your
pay.
pay today. Okay.
I did not earn my pay today. I didn't live up to my rank. Here's everything he found wrong." And I just flipped out because I had been working so hard. I was like, and I just lost it. And the staff
So
sergeant next to me is just pulling on my sleeve, like, stop talking, stop talking. Like, he can hem you up. Of course, he's a master sergeant. And I'm
what
like,
rank were you at that time?
staff sergeant.
Oh my God.
Yes, and I'm just going off, and I'm just like, and he was like, and once I was done, he said, "Okay, Sar, I'll let you have that one. I'll let you have that one." And I said, "You're gonna let me have this one and any other one I want." I was so like, I was just, young. I think I was probably 24 at the time, but and then I walked away. And but he, again, opportunity. I shouldn't have done it. And luckily I had
You
people
got
that were like,
lucky. That's what you got.
I got, yeah, big time, big time.
Yeah.
Definitely I would count them as opportunities for improvement.
Yeah. So I'll share my story. So this was fresh Captain Gazal, and so brand spanking new, brand new commander, and I got orders to take my detachment to Iraq, and how we were training in preparation to deploy. So we went and got all our equipment, and then we were sitting there. I think this was now, I don't know, it must have been like a week before deploying, actually getting on a plane, and all my soldiers like, hey, we're deploying to a camp, and I think it was Camp Liberty at the time, whatever it was, and we're going to be indoors. We're not going to leave the camp, and it's going to be safe, and there's going to be no issues. So we were thinking of like not carrying all our body armor. I was like, what do
Hmm.
you mean? She goes, well, we don't need the deltoid protectors, and we don't need the groin protectors. So I mean, that just save us some weight, because this was actually going to be carried with you on the plane. So you're going to be like lugging it around. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. We're going to a camp. We're not gonna, leave the camp. Like, why? Why would we?
Yeah.
This was a finance attachment. So of
Oh,
course,
okay. Yeah. What do
finance.
y'all need it
Like, we're
for?
not. We're special. We're staying air conditioned. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Just leave them here. That's fine. We won't drag them. And so yeah, we deployed. I mean, we had body armor, but we didn't have the delts. We didn't have the groin
And
protection.
where did you leave them?
I don't know. I think people left them at home or something. Because this
Oh,
was like a week.
so
Yeah, this is
so
like,
y'all didn't even, they didn't even end up with you. Okay, all right.
we got on a
The plot
plane
the
and all
plot
that stuff was
thickens.
back home.
All right.
And sure enough, we got to Iraq, and it's pretty safe, air conditioned, and we were, I don't know, a couple of months into deployment, and it was fine. Like, I think it was like 10 months in of a 15-month deployment, and it was fine. Um, until all of a sudden we got orders that we need to go around to each fob and do missions, so finance missions. So in other words,
Mm.
kind of like, you send out two soldiers, 2 to 3 soldiers, carrying around some money, and just pay soldiers in remote fobs.
Mm.
And as soon as we heard that, and maybe like a day or two later, the battalion command sergeant major came down. It was just kind of one of us. We were one of his stops on the rotations around theater.
Mm.
And he's like, "Oh, I hear you're gonna send out teams to support these fobs." I was like, "Yes, yes, Sergeant Major. They're ready to train. They're ready to go." And then somehow or another, he saw soldiers walking around with body armor, but they didn't have the delts protectors and didn't have the groin protectors. He goes, "Hey, Captain Gonzalez, where's the why don't you have your soldiers wearing their full body armor?" And
Oh.
man, my
Oh.
heart just stopped, because when you're talking to a battalion commander sergeant major, you're talking to the battalion commander,
Yeah.
and I was like, they're not here, sergeant major. Where are they? We left them back home. Man,
Ooh.
talk about going from 0 to 60 real quick. Red, angry, like I've not seen a person like get this angry before. And I was scared. I was like, oh shoot,
Yeah.
And he's like, what are you doing? You gotta take care of your soldiers. These soldiers gotta go out, and if they die, God forbid something happens to them, it's your fault. How are you going to explain that to their parents? And, rightfully so. I mean, everything he said was 100% spot on.
Yeah.
And I felt, yeah, man, I felt so little that day. I mean, he was yelling at me, and
Dang.
I was just taking it. It was just one round after another because I couldn't say anything. He's absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I failed my soldiers. They said,
Mm.
"Oh, we don't need to take it," and I was like, "Yeah, sure," and but I should have been better. I should have been like, "No, just take it with you just in case." Well, one, I mean, it's part of your gear.
Yes.
Two, it's safety. It's safety. It's,
Yeah.
it's for your life.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a huge failure that really left a mark on me. It's just like how that's me failing my soldiers, honestly.
Mm.
Because God forbid something happened to one of them, they
Yeah.
lose an arm, or now they can't have kids anymore.
Yeah.
Or God forbid they die out there.
Yeah.
How am I going to explain that?
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that is it's one thing you say, hey, your soldiers were prepared and they had all their protective gear and they were out and doing their job, but it's another to say, yeah, your son or daughter did not have all their complete body armor kit because I told them to leave it at home.
Yeah.
It's such a horrible feeling.
So
So
what
that was a
happened? So did y'all end up getting the gear from somewhere or?
Yeah, so we had to go to CIF on Camp Liberty, I
Okay.
guess at that time. Yeah, and we got issued new gear.
Okay.
So yeah, I was very fortunate. Like and to his leadership, Sergeant Major. After he chewed me out, he went out and he helped me get the gear that I needed for my team. So that's
Yeah.
big respect for him because he did what he needed to do, but then he's like, "Hey, I still need to take care of these soldiers."
Yeah.
And he went out and then talked to Camp Supply and got us the equipment that we needed. Because there's no at that time body armor was still relatively new, and there's no
Mm.
extra stuff. There's no extra supply really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like as like I went to right before we deployed, we got the body armor and we were pulling it out of plastic wrap. That's how new it was,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
and
I remember
it's
that.
yeah, it was very, very new. And so there was no extra anything. And so
Yeah.
the sergeant major really had to kind of, you know, I don't know what he told the supply team, but
Yeah.
he got us that equipment, and that lesson is still stuck in my mind to this
Yeah.
day because I definitely, it could have been ugly.
Yeah.
And it kind of taught me like I don't necessarily always need to side, and maybe I was trying to be a nice guy. I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you can't be a nice guy all the time because you have to think of the soldiers' well-being, their
Yeah.
safety. So yeah, that was a big failure on my part, but lesson learned for sure.
Yeah. And there's plenty, and I'm sure any people that are listening definitely drop those comments below, but where you're going to have NCOs officers, because I remember one of my earlier warrant officers going in on me similar to that, really chewing me out, and uh, it's for a reason. You have to learn. It's tough pill to swallow for all of us at the time. You definitely feel very little
Mhm,
belittled and
mhm.
super small, and it's like, okay, but you learn from it. It's hard when that happens and others around
Yeah.
and they see it, and then they're like, damn, Captain Gazal just got his ass chewed. And it's just
Yes.
like, and then but like, to your point, that's where you do have to make those tough decisions,
Yeah.
because you do want to be there, you want to be the nice guy. Sometimes people want to be liked, but at the same time you have to make those. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do this no matter what. You're going to carry it, you're going to whatever it is. It's just what has to happen, because at the end of the day you have to be prepared 100%. So you know, thanks for sharing, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Thanks for
was that.
allowing me to relive that stress of my
Yeah.
life.
Please, people comment. How was T telling that story?
Man,
But a very good one. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
And then for everyone else, definitely drop the comments on, those first NCOs. If you remember their names, drop them in, give them a shout out. But what did you learn from that?
Yeah.
You're taking on your first leadership role. How was that experience for you? And then did you have a early failure or an opportunity where you could have done things much different, maybe had a better outcome, that you don't mind sharing? The rest of us. And like I said before, in one of our previous episodes, we will take a look at the comments, and we will revisit some of those, and chat about it. So definitely share with us. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Anything else from you, T?
Nah, I'm just gonna have a drink. I need a drink.
Yeah, I need to run out. I think it's as I call it, some sippy sip time. It's definitely some sippy sip time for sure. So, all right, everyone. Well, appreciate y'all, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.